My boyfriend thought acting cold would make me obsessed with him. I introduced him to his replacement. It all started perfectly. For the first 2 months, Leo was everything I could have wanted. Sweet, attentive, texting me good morning without fail, planning thoughtful dates. We'd stay up until 3 a.m. talking about everything and nothing. My best friend, Chloe, said I'd finally found a keeper. Then, around the 2-month mark, a shift happened. It was subtle at first. His replies to my texts took hours, even though I could see he was active online. He began canceling our plans last minute with vague excuses about forgetting prior commitments. When we did see each other, he was often glued to his phone, and if I tried to start a conversation, he'd act like I was bothering him. I chalked it up to work stress and gave him space, but that only made it worse. Though I love you, as I offered were met with silence. He'd show up late without an apology. If I cooked him dinner, he'd eat it in front of the TV without a word of thanks. When I tried to voice my concerns, he'd shrug and tell me I was overthinking, that everything was fine. Chloe told me to dump him, but I held on to the memory of those first amazing months, making excuses for his behavior. One Friday, he told me he was having a guys' night at his place. I wasn't invited, which was fine as I had plans with Chloe anyway. But an hour before we were supposed to go out, Chloe got hit with a nasty stomach bug. I'd already made a huge pot of soup for her, so I decided to be the nice girlfriend and drop some off for Leo and his friends. I arrived at his apartment, the container of soup warm in my hands, and was about to knock when I heard my name through the door. Leo was talking loudly, clearly animated. He was boasting to his friends about how I was completely wrapped around his finger now that he'd started treating me poorly. My blood ran cold. One of his friends asked why he would do that, and Leo said he'd read online that girls want what they can't have. He explained that the less attention he gave me, the more desperate I'd become to win him back. He bragged that I'd been cooking for him and buying him gifts ever since he started ignoring me. His friends laughed, and one called me dumb for falling for it. Leo said it wasn't about being dumb. It was about psychology. That girls think they can fix cold guys, which makes them try harder. He said he could probably cheat on me at that point, and I just blamed myself. They all found this hilarious. I stood there, frozen, holding the stupid soup, listening to my boyfriend detail his deliberate, calculated manipulation of my feelings. He said the best part was that I was so in love with him now that he could treat me however he wanted and I'd never leave. Someone asked if he even liked me. Leo said I was cool enough, but the power trip was honestly better than the relationship. I left without knocking, drove home in a daze, put the soup in the fridge, and called Chloe. Even through her nausea, she was furious. And that's when we came up with a plan. I wasn't going to break up with him. Not yet. Instead of confronting him, I decided to become the exact type of distant, unpredictable girlfriend he pretended to want. But I had no idea just how far he would go when the tables were turned. I didn't break up with Leo. Instead, I began mirroring his energy with chilling precision. I stopped texting him first. When he finally reached out, I'd wait twice as long as he did to reply. Sometimes, I'd just leave him on read. If he asked to hang out, I'd give a non-committal maybe, and only confirm at the last minute, acting like it was no big deal either way. I stopped cooking for him, stopped buying little gifts, and stopped putting any effort into our dates. Leo noticed the change immediately, though he tried to play it cool. But as my indifference grew, so did his attention. He showed up at my door with flowers one day. I simply said thanks and put them in water without any of the usual excitement. He started texting me more, trying to initiate real conversations. I replied with one-word answers. He asked if something was wrong, and I said no, why would anything be wrong? But the real masterstroke was Ryan. He was a guy from my political science class. We were strictly friends, but Leo didn't need to know that. I started casually mentioning Ryan in conversation, how he'd said something funny in class, or how we'd grabbed a coffee after the library. Leo's curiosity was immediately piqued. He'd ask probing questions about Ryan, and I'd just shrug and change the subject. Then, I started being busy when Leo wanted to see me. Sorry, I already made plans with Ryan to study. Can't tonight, Ryan got us tickets to a show. Maybe another time, Ryan's having people over. Leo was slowly losing his mind, but he was trying desperately to act like he wasn't. He began showing up at places he knew I'd be, like the campus coffee shop. He'd see me laughing with Ryan and come over, putting on a territorial display. I'd introduce them super casually, like Leo was just some guy I knew. Ryan, who thought the whole situation was absurdly funny, played along perfectly. The tension was building, a slow-burning fuse heading toward an inevitable explosion. I was no longer the pawn in his game. I was now the player, and I held the board. The plan was working better than I'd imagined, but everything escalated the night Leo decided to surprise me with dinner and found Ryan already comfortably settled on my couch. The night Leo showed up unannounced at my apartment with takeout from my favorite sushi place, the plan reached its peak. Ryan was already there, sitting on the couch with a textbook open, a movie paused on the TV. Leo stood in the doorway, his eyes darting between us, the bag of food dangling from his hand. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice tight. I kept my tone light. "We're just hanging out. Is that a problem?" Ryan stood up and walked over, extending his hand. "Hey, man, I'm Ryan." Leo stared at his hand for a second before shaking it, his grip visibly too tight, making Ryan's friendly smile turn a little strained. I introduced them again, slowly, as if talking to children. "Ryan, this is Leo. Leo, Ryan." Ryan said it was nice to meet him, but Leo just nodded, silent. The air in the apartment grew thick and heavy. Leo's eyes scanned the room, the textbook on the coffee table, the paused movie, me standing there perfectly calm. I walked over and took the takeout bag from his hand. "Thanks, this smells amazing," I said. He asked again what we were doing. "Studying for our political science exam tomorrow," I said smoothly. Ryan added, "Yeah, it's a huge test. We really need to focus." I could see a muscle in Leo's jaw twitching, a telltale sign he was fighting back anger. I placed the food on the counter and told him we appreciated the gesture, but we had to get back to work. He asked if he could stay and wait until we were done. I said maybe, but I'd text him later because I didn't know how long we'd be. Ryan was already sitting back down and opening his laptop, effectively ending the conversation. Leo stood there for a few more seconds, utterly defeated, before I walked to the door and held it open with a polite, fake smile. He finally left. I leaned against the closed door, my heart pounding. Ryan looked up from his laptop. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded, coming back to the couch. He said it was intense to watch. I suddenly felt guilty for dragging him into my mess. He was a genuinely nice person. He asked if I wanted to talk about it, and I found myself opening up, telling him the whole story about overhearing Leo. Ryan listened and said he was happy to help, but warned me not to lose myself in the game playing. We actually did study after that, the tension slowly ebbing away, replaced by a strange new alliance. After that night, Leo's texts became desperate and constant, but my resolve was stronger than ever. Little did I know, he was already starting a smear campaign against me, forcing me to protect my own reputation that Leo's attempts to win me back escalated. He sent long, sweet texts, brought me lunch between classes, and offered to help with my assignments. It would have been touching if I didn't know it was just another tactic, the nice guy approach now that his cold act had backfired. I kept my responses short and non-committal. Meanwhile, Chloe came home from her shift at the university library with news. She'd run into a mutual friend, Maya, who mentioned that Leo had been complaining about me. He was telling everyone I had become cold and distant for no reason, painting himself as the confused, victimized boyfriend. I was furious. He was the one who started this, and now he was trying to control the story. I decided I needed to tell my side to a few close friends. I wasn't going to start public drama, but I needed to protect my reputation. I took 3 of my most trusted friends out for pizza and told them everything, the conversation I'd overheard, the deliberate manipulation, the boasting about the power trip. They were horrified. One of them put her hand over her mouth. Another said she'd always thought his behavior seemed calculated, and the third was visibly angry on my behalf. Their validation was a balm to my soul. They all said I should dump him immediately, but I explained I had a different plan. A couple of days later, Leo texted me, confused about why people were being weird around him. He asked directly if I'd been talking about him. I stared at the message, then typed back that he'd been talking about me, so maybe he should look at his own behavior first. It was the most direct I'd been. He tried to call immediately, but I declined and left him on read. The next day, He asked to meet for coffee to talk things out face to face. Chloe made me promise to text her every 30 minutes. I was nervous but also curious. What would he possibly have to say for himself? As I walked into the coffee shop, I saw Leo already waiting, looking more nervous than I'd ever seen him. I was ready for his apology, but I was completely unprepared for the lies he was about to tell. Leo was already at a corner table in the coffee shop, and he stood up when he saw me, his nerves palpable. He launched immediately into a rehearsed apology, talking about how stressed he'd been with school and work, and how he hadn't realized he was neglecting our relationship. He said he cared about me so much and wanted to do better. He talked for several minutes, his voice pleading, but I noticed a crucial omission. There was not a single word about the manipulation, the online advice, or the conversation I'd overheard. He was lying straight to my face, hoping I was just upset about his neglect, and not the calculated games. When he finally finished, I looked him dead in the eye. "Have you been playing games with me on purpose, Leo?" His eyes widened in feigned shock. He denied it instantly, saying he would never do something like that. I watched him closely, and I could see the gears turning behind his eyes, trying to calculate how much I knew. That look, that cold calculation, sealed his fate. This wasn't about remorse, it was about damage control. I didn't tell him what I knew. Instead, I said I needed space to think about whether this relationship was working for me. Panic flashed across his face. "Are you breaking up with me?" he asked, reaching for my hand. I pulled back. "I don't know yet," I said, standing up to leave. "I just need time." I walked out, feeling his desperate gaze on my back. The following week, he pulled out all the stops, more gifts, more sweet texts, more random appearances. It was all a performance. Ryan, who'd been a rock through it all, pointed out that I'd successfully made Leo miserable, but asked what my endgame was. I realized I didn't have one. I'd been so focused on the revenge that I hadn't planned an exit strategy. The games were starting to feel hollow, and the initial hurt was still there, festering beneath the surface. My revenge plot was falling apart because I was falling apart inside, and everything came to a terrifying head at an off-campus party when Leo's desperation turned into drunken, public aggression. Ryan invited me to a party at an off-campus house, and Chloe convinced me to go and try to have fun. I was talking to some people when I saw Leo push through the crowd. He was clearly drunk, his face a mask of anger, and he was heading straight for me. "Are you hooking up with Ryan?" he demanded, his voice loud enough to draw stares from everyone around us. I told him he was embarrassing himself. He grabbed my arm, his grip tight. "Where is he?" Before I could react, a couple of guys from my study group stepped between us, telling Leo to back off. Ryan appeared instantly, his hand on my back. "You okay?" he asked. Leo tried to lunge at him, but more people intervened, pulling us struggling, shouting Leo toward the door as someone called an Uber. Ryan and I left immediately. I was shaking the whole walk home. I'd never seen that violent side of him before. The next morning, a long, rambling text from Leo arrived, blaming the alcohol and school stress, begging for another chance, saying he loved me and couldn't lose me. It was the same cycle, bad behavior followed by empty words that I didn't reply. I called my older sister, who lived out of state, and told her the whole story. She listened patiently, and then asked a simple, devastating question. "Do you even want to be with him anymore? Or are you just staying because you're angry?" I didn't have an answer. I'd been so busy reacting to him that I'd forgotten to decide what I actually wanted. Meanwhile, Chloe noticed I was spending more and more time with Ryan, not as part of the plan, but because I genuinely enjoyed his company. He was easy to talk to, funny, and he actually listened. Things felt simple with him. She asked if I was developing real feelings, and I had to admit that I might be. The plan had started to blur, and my own emotions were becoming confusingly real. Just when I thought I was gaining clarity, Leo's friend from political science class approached me with an unexpected apology, revealing that Leo was now the one obsessively seeking advice on how to win me back, the ultimate irony that left me questioning everything. Leo's friend, the one who'd been laughing that night at the apartment, found me after class. He looked uncomfortable and apologized for his part in it, saying he thought it was just dumb guy talk and didn't realize how serious Leo was about the manipulation. He admitted Leo was spiraling, obsessed with getting me back and asking his friends for strategic advice. The irony was staggering. Later, Chloe called me into her room, her face grim. She had her laptop open, showing me a collection of screenshots she'd been taking for weeks. They were of Leo's social media posts. Subtle, victim-blaming messages about how hard it was when your girlfriend changes for no reason, comments about mind games, and a whole narrative where he was the perfect boyfriend and I was the cold, unpredictable villain. Seeing the evidence laid out like that, the deliberate campaign to smear me, was the final push I needed. The anger crystallized into resolve. I texted Leo and asked him to meet me at the campus coffee shop. He responded within seconds, a flurry of anxious messages. I ignored them all. The next day, I walked in with Chloe's screenshots burning in my mind. He was already there, tapping his foot nervously. I sat down and didn't smile. He started his usual spiel about missing me, but I cut him off. "I know, Leo," I said, my voice calm and steady. "I was standing outside your apartment door that night. I heard every word you said to your friends." His face went bone white. He stammered, trying to say it was a joke, that I misunderstood. I stopped him. "I heard you say you were treating me like crap on purpose. I heard you say the power trip was better than our relationship." He switched to anger, accusing me of playing games too by using Ryan. I agreed, admitting I wasn't proud of it, but I pointed out I only started after discovering his months-long manipulation. He actually argued that what I did was worse because it was on purpose, completely missing the point. I stood up. "We're done," I said. "Don't contact me unless it's about getting your stuff." He looked utterly shattered, but I felt nothing but exhaustion. I walked out and didn't look back, a heavy weight finally lifting from my shoulders. The breakup was final, but the fallout was just beginning. As I navigated the awkwardness of our shared social circles and my growing connection with Ryan, I realized the hardest part wasn't leaving Leo, it was rebuilding myself and learning to trust again. The weeks after the breakup were strange. Seeing Leo around campus was awkward, and mutual friends were caught in the middle. I felt pangs of guilt seeing him look miserable, but Chloe firmly reminded me that his feelings were no longer my responsibility. I started focusing on myself, joining a study group and making new friends. I even started seeing a counselor at the campus health center who helped me understand why I tolerated such toxic behavior for so long, linking it to patterns from my childhood. It was hard but necessary work. Ryan and I continued to spend time together, and everything felt easy and honest with him. There were no games, no hidden agendas. He was consistent and kind, and he never made me feel like I had to perform or strategize. We took things slow, building a foundation of friendship and trust first. When he told me he was falling in love with me, it felt earned and real, not like the intense, drama-fueled love I'd had with Leo. I felt the same way. A year later, my life was unrecognizable in the best way. I was happy, doing well in my classes, and in a healthy, communicative relationship with Ryan. I heard through the grapevine that Leo had graduated and moved away. The experience, as painful as it was, taught me everything about my own worth. I learned that the best revenge isn't an elaborate plot. It's building a life so good and so full of genuine happiness that the past loses its power over you. I was no longer the girl holding the soup outside the door. I was stronger, wiser, and finally free. As I looked toward the future with Ryan and my friends, I knew one thing for certain. I would never again mistake manipulation for love, and that lesson was the most powerful victory of all.